Hello, everybody. This is Lance Corporal Cavender, and you're on the Lance Corporal Cavender Show, Episode 3. I've got Terrence on the line with us. We didn't have Terrence with us on Episode 2, but we're very happy that he's back. Terrence, how are you doing today?
All right, all right. Yourself?
Oh, doing well. We're getting this big snowstorm up here, right here at the starting spring with 5 inches of snow. It's kind of crazy. Came out of nowhere.
Snow that'll probably shut the city down.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And we kind of had some people talking about that in the news early this week. Terrence sent me that article. I thought it was real funny. Talking about geoengineering and the Rothschilds and causing all this weather events. So, Tom, that's you again, working behind the scenes, making us sound good. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
How
Glad
you
to be
been
here.
doing?
I've been doing very well, very busy, and doing very well.
All right. God bless you. That's good to hear.
Thank you.
So I guess we'll go ahead and start. This episode's going to be on intelligence and kind of what that means and what can you do with intelligence? How does it affect the world, and what good is it? And I know that's kind of a silly question, but it's a deep thought conversation piece. I always talk when people talk to me, they'll ask me, you're a smart guy. You're a smart guy. And I'm like, no, I don't want to be a smart guy. Smart people know things and they repeat things. And a wise man once told me, the more I learn, the less I know. Which more means you go out there and you learn and you experience the world and you realize there's so much out there that you haven't even thought about asking the question. So I kind of look at intelligence, ignorance, and smart, kind of like, the definition of intelligence is the ability to receive, process, and react to information and stimuli. So stimuli can be the light, the heat, vibration, or whatnot, the environment around you. And whether that's a small amoeba or cell that responds to its environment, reproduces, fights off infection or whatnot. That small amount of intelligence, and then we go into great intelligence where you handle more variables. So a human being going through emotions and how you anger, love, happiness, blah blah blah, heat. You've got all of the physical, and then you've got this thing called consciousness. And we can't really define what consciousness is. So,
But it would be fun to try, wouldn't it?
oh well, I promise you, people do it all the time. They do it all the time. Try to define what is consciousness, subconsciousness, the ego, blah 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 blah, and based on this idea of you're just processing in micro bits of data on huge vibrations and harmonics. So, well, where this really is supposed to go is talking about information is intelligence is processing information. Information is variables. With the variables, you can project, predict, and see what's going to happen. And in America, the number one ultimate source of information is the CIA. And the CIA is involved in a lot of things. And today we're going to kind of talk about some of the things that they do, that we know that they do, like the Iran-Contra affair. Some things that we have a lot of information about that would suggest that they're involved in things that are scandalous, bad, against what we would consider our best interest, and then hidden from us. And then how that help me out here.
Replicates.
Repercussions for that affect our community, our people, and how we interact in our daily lives.
Sure.
So, Terrence, I don't want to leave you silent too long. You have anything on that? Oh, did we lose
No, I'm
Terrence?
just listening.
Yeah.
Listening in.
Just, I can pontificate like with the best of them. So every time I got to shut up and give somebody a chance to talk. So today we're going to talk about the Iran-Contra affair. And this is something that happened in the 80s. This happened under the Reagan administration, but more specifically, this happened under George Herbert Walker Bush. So it would be President 41. And he made his career through leading the CIA. He worked his way up through the CIA from at least the early 60s all the way into the 70s. And then he made it to president, vice president, and president.
How do you get into that industry, the information industry?
You know, obviously you've got to go, I'm not going to be a recruiter for the CIA, but
Sure,
you apply for the CIA. They do recruiting through colleges, and you know people.
Okay.
You may be recruited by the CIA because you were known through a family, and when you start talking about known from a family, then you're starting to talk about Prescott Bush, which I believe was his father, and a member of secret societies.
Not to interrupt you. Do you know anything about Prescott Bush?
Yeah, he was.
Doesn't he have deep ties in war profiteering?
Absolutely, a lot, and he also is involved in the Ivy League. I think it's one of the Ivy League schools. I want to say Harvard or Yale. I don't know. I'm going to get it wrong. I'm not investigating right off the hand, but they were in the Skull and Bones kind of secret society, and they talked about they're involved in Masonic beliefs and things like that, and that has its own symbolism that I don't want to get into tonight, but it's a very close, organized, corporate kind of ties company that leaders of industry work together while they're these young kids going up through these schools. But George Bush is involved, since his infancy, and that came from his dad that was involved in pre-World War I and movements that we kind of talked about a little bit that led to us going to those world wars. But George Bush was kind of overseeing some events during that time. We're really fighting communism real hard. And there's two major events that are going on in the world that we're kind of fighting off our enemy, so our Cold War enemy. And one was the Shah of Iran, and the other one was the Sandinistas in Nicaragua. Now, you don't think of Nicaragua and of South America and Iran of the Middle East as really connected. I mean, they're pretty far away. They're completely different hemispheres of the world, and how to their only real tie is kind of through this world order kind of concept and the United States. Now, what through the Bose Act, you could not, the Congress would not authorize spending to fund the Contras who were fighting off. They were a rebel group fighting off the Sandinistas. So we want to support them, but we don't have public funding to take care of this.
Sure.
However, the president, Reagan thought that this was a very important thing. He wanted this to happen within the law, right? Of
course.
But there's no way to do it. So it's just like this is a good thing to do. Hey, the CIA's like, well, let's see what we can work out. How can you make money to do this so we're not getting it from the taxpayer, okay? Now, at the same time, we've got this war between Iraq and Iran. Well, Iraq, funny enough, was led by Saddam Hussein, Saddam Hussein was a rebel leader at one time who somehow came to power and took over this sovereign nation. And we're going to look back and see that he had connections to the CIA and how he was encouraged or boosted up into this position to overthrow a sovereign nation and take over the, so the CIA has this going on a lot. We would do that with the Afghan fighters in the Osama bin Ladens who were fighting off the Russians in Afghanistan, right? And we justified it because, well, we're fighting off communism who's trying to expand, which is a continuation. The whole Cold War is about, stopping communism from spreading. So we can't directly support Iran because they're our enemy, but they also represent different Middle Eastern factions, and there were some hostages taken. I believe it was 7 hostages, and we needed a way to get those hostages released, right? But we also wanted to support unrest in Iran at the same time. So what we would do is we would sell weapons directly, and the President Reagan knew this. He approved this. That we sold weapons to Israel. And oh my God, I'd hate it if I'm wrong. It could have been Lebanon, and I'm not sure. I really apologize. I should have been more prepared. But anyway, this is this third-party country, and they're going to sell the weapons that they bought from us to Iran, and they're going to mark them up. Well, the markup is what goes back to the CIA. The CIA takes up that markup money, and they take it to the Contras in Nicaragua, so that they would, we'll give you weapons and we'll give you money. And it's not coming from the government. It's not coming from the American taxpayer. It's coming through this indirectly.
Right.
The taxpayer bought these weapons that we sold, got our money back, and then they went and did the markup, whatever they wanted to do. So those are known things. That is congressional hearings. Oliver North, it sat down. We said, yes, we lied to the American people. We did this under false pretenses, but we felt it justified. The means justified lying to America to do something that we know is illegal. That's why there was an act saying don't spend money to support these uprisings. Okay?
So it is a fact that we know the CIA has lied.
Yes.
And that they've admitted to it, and that they've admitted to possibly even doing things illegally because they felt like it was for the betterment of the country. At what point do they lose their validity? What point do they lose their
veracity, their power, their oversight?
Sure.
Their oversight comes from the Congress, okay? So if they say, this is a government agency and they have the information that they may or may not let out, but they're going to have people biting at their heels and doing these investigations, right? Now understand that all of this trading went on for years. It wasn't found out till and reported on till many years after most of it had been done, right? But what was found out, now that now that we've established a very strong, based on government documented congressional testimony, the United States was supplying the Contras with money to overthrow the Sandinistas. We are in bed with them, right? Now what happens is when we're taking this cash to them, and we're flying it over there, and we're putting weapons and things like that in these shipments. Now, we're just scheduling them, right? The CIA is just providing or allowing this transportation to happen. They know it's happening. They set it up to happen. They put the people in place to do it. And then they just kind of turn their eye to it. And anytime somebody gets close to it, you say, okay, you got this guy under arrest. Well, he's under protection of the CIA. Back off, okay? This happens a lot, right? So what happens is you start getting, let's say that the CIA, Oliver North, is speaking with 2 Nicaraguan informants, right? They're sitting down and they're talking, they're having a conversation. We know this conversation happened, but these two Nicaraguans that are working for the CIA, who have connections in Western America and California, and they're known drug dealers, and Oliver North saying, we need to run money, we need to make money, we need to create money, and we've got to do it under these guidelines, which is basically saying we can, it doesn't matter where the money comes from, but it can't come from the government. Go make us money. And you're talking to two drug dealers, so what are they going to do?
They're gonna sell drugs.
They're going to sell drugs. So they, now we're already sending these shipments to Nicaragua. They're dropping off money. They're dropping off weapons, and it just so happened that the same plane that was going back to America got filled up with 7 tons of cocaine. Okay, now that goes back to the United States, and if you do your investigation, you see that Barry Seal, a CIA, he wasn't a CIA agent, right? He wasn't like official, but he knew that he was working on behalf of the powers that worked for directly so-and-so in the CIA.
Right.
Okay. Now, the CIA's got complete deniability that, no, this guy's,
We don't know anything.
we don't know anything. We don't know that he exists, and who is this guy anyway, right? And that's how you do spies. You that's why you have a burn notice. When this identify, we burn it. That person's got to go, because we do not confirm nor deny the existence of said person, right? So these drugs would come back into America, and a lot of investigations show that they were going into Searcy, Arkansas, and Barry Seal was flying a lot of operations into Searcy, Arkansas, I believe. And then what happened is these two Nicaraguans, now they know that they can get this cocaine into the country, but this is late 70s, early 80s, and there's not really an explosive market for cocaine.
Sure.
What there is there's, cocaine's an expensive drug. People, it's a party drug. It's a recreational thing, but it's not something that's just like always using, right? And this is not a real established, dependent market out there. But what happens is you've got Highway Rick Ross. Now, Highway Rick Ross was, he was a Southern California guy. He played tennis. He almost got a scholarship playing tennis, but he didn't have the grades, and nobody was really looking for a South Los Angeles Compton tennis player. He's not going to go to Stanford. It's just the reality of the situation, right? Now, he just happens to run into these two Nicaraguans who say, hey, can you move this, right? And they're looking, they're desperate, they're trying to find it. What Rick Ross really did was he just wanted to be good. He wanted to work, he just had that work ethic, right? Sure. And what it is at that time, nobody would really rock up their own cocaine. What they would do is, it would have a specialist, so somebody would have to control it, and you didn't have it bake and rock in the kitchen in your house, right? So what he did was he would do it for people who were going to work. He'd say, hey, man, can you cook me up some rock? And he would do it, and there's stories of this, right? Mm-hmm. So the CIA definitely says, hey, go make money, go sell drugs, but it's not like we're saying this is the targeted audience of where we want. Just get it in there and get it going, right? But once you've started doing that, once you've allowed it, once you've seen it, you've kind of got to say, don't touch it, let it grow. That's making money for us so that we can do our other things around the world, right? Mm-hmm. Rick Ross is the one who really got into your gang. Your gangs ran the streets because they were protection, because you didn't really have law enforcement coming in there, and there was a rule. It was the rule of the road, and it was a self-protection type of thing, and it was really, communities policing themselves, right? Mm-hmm. But now you've got money involved in it, and in this there's already a black market of things going on controlled by organized crime, right?
Sure,
This
absolutely.
there's organized crime, the same as your mafia,
Sure.
organized crime, or anybody else. So crack becomes this expensive, crack takes this real expensive, rarely used recreational drug, and now it's made it into the cheap. Anybody can get it. You can turn your profits. You take so much powder cocaine, you make much more in crack by cutting it up, and there's a market to it,
Sure.
right? It explodes. It just explodes onto the entire West Coast.
And to
right?
what demographic of people did it explode to at first?
Well, I mean, you've got Highway Rick Ross, who happens to know black people in black neighborhoods
Sure.
who are running already an established black market organization, right?
Sure.
So now you flooded it with an unbelievable. You have flooded the entire market with this drug and made it affordable to the cheapest of people, right? Now, once that happens, everybody wants to get their little cut on it, right? So, they've drawn up lines of who gets how much drugs,
Right.
and you get assorted this much, and you get
Right.
assorted over this much. You police your area because we're not going to get any law enforcement because the CIA has told the FBI to tell the local public attorney, we're not going to be pursuing this. This is government. The government depends on these drugs being sold throughout your neighborhood. And since you don't have a police force and you don't have any way to establish law and order, right, and it's controlled by the baddest man on the street,
Yep.
where now you're going to get in. Now, if you're a Nicaraguan and you're already getting guns that you're sending to Nicaragua and you're selling cocaine, well, why not sell those exact same guns to the gangs
Yep.
that are policing themselves? And now they've started killing each other. Now, this whole time we're going under this war on drugs. The irony of having our country go hard on crime, right? Now, the war on crime really started in the late 60s in New York, and some pretty, I want to say Nixon was involved in it, and I could be wrong, but he was really making his political push based on the war on crime, and now we're starting to grow our prison industry, right? And there's a lot of money to be grown into this industry, so you need to fill beds, you need to get people in there to fill beds. What do you need to do? You need to
arrest
make
people.
more. You need to arrest people. You need to make more crimes,
Right,
More
exactly.
crimes. Now that you have more crimes, you have to hire more police. Now that you have to have more police, you have to have arrests. So you're doing something to fill a prison system, right? A prison system that, by the way, is traded on the open stock exchange, right? Our prisons are for-profit prisons. They're not fun. So literally, the investment of a business of putting beds in, getting money from the government. This is assured money, right? You know what your profit margins are
Right.
going to be, and all you have to do is make sure that the beds are full.
Right.
And by to get the beds full, you've got to put out, you'll put out a little hit piece on a gang shootout happened in Los Angeles and 5 people were dead, right? Now that's going to make people feel in their communities that they're in danger, even though they're not really in danger. They're being scared by violence that is perpetuated by an unpoliced system. It's unpoliced on purpose because it has national security interests at risk. So at the same time, you started this this fear campaign, right? You started this fear campaign of this Wild West, gang shootout, Bloods and Crips killing each other, and no American is safe on the roads because of all of these bad things. So what happens is you get people who vote for another prison, right? You got to do that because these people who were filling the prison's full. Now we're having to let people go early. Nobody tells you that they're letting people go early that are on possession charges that really weren't any kind of a violent threat to society.
Right.
They're just criminals. They're criminals because we made a prohibition law, right? Well, the prohibition also inflates black market prices because there's more to. So who gains by that? Well, the CIA gains from that, right? So at the same time that we're filling these prisons, we're also putting out gangster rap, right? Gangster rap, and people don't like to acknowledge that the music they listen to has a profound effect on their behavior, on their emotions.
Absolutely.
It's a very powerful medium, and it gets certain rhythms, certain beats can bring up certain emotions, and you can rile people up. You can get them energized. You can get them to do the behavior that's going to lead them to do whatever you want them to do. Because I'm not going to say that it's just one group that gets really targeted here. We're talking about everybody. Everybody's got a scoop of the pie of being fed the bullshit, So today we're really talking about that. For one, we do have the CIA, that they are doing fucked up shit. Now, it's not evidence, right? Now, they've done a lot of information, and they've done a lot of, investigative journalism, but they start to say that that's not evidence, that's just information. And your information doesn't count as evidence, and therefore it has not been judged by the court system. It's not the official word, and therefore it is a theory, a hypothesis. And now we have demonized conspiracy theory, which is really just investigating the narrative of systems we know and we have caught lying to us in the past. And since we're talking about a court system that's trying to, one, discredit you through whatever language you use, any particular behavior you had, an event, they discredit you like they would discredit a witness, okay? Now, if they're incapable of discrediting you as a witness, then they may try to bribe you or influence you to do something, okay? And if not, you may, get knocked off. You might disappear. Now, a lot of the evidence...
And that's a real thing.
It's a very real thing. And it brings up the thought of Gary Webb. Gary Webb is the investigative journalist that really locked down the investigation that took the CIA from Panama into South Central Los Angeles.
Okay.
And Rick Ross.
Okay.
Now, Rick Ross would say, hey, I worked with the CIA all the time. He didn't work with the CIA. He worked with two guys that were informants for the CIA indirectly. So he's not part of the CIA. But he is connected to someone who's connected. And therefore, he is following along with the plan.
Right.
Okay? But he's a criminal. And if he's a criminal, he's not a valid witness to say that these things happen. He's got a grudge. He's got something against the system that brought him down. But the truth is that he was telling them what, he created the market.
Apologize for that.
Oh, no problem. Is Terrence, you still there? Did we lose?
I'm still here.
Oh, okay. You know how I go. I just start to ramble on. So what do you think about that, Terrence? What you got anything to say? Feed into him?
Now, it's kind of a tangent to what you had said. You had mentioned how music, hip hop, gangster rap, as you call it, that's in my wheelhouse. That's what I do. That's what I listen to. It doesn't influence me like it does other people, but I've always found it interesting why some of the most popular artists, acts, whatever you want to call them, were who they were. It wasn't necessarily always about talent, but it always seemed to fall into the same category. And right now, I'm not sure if you're aware, there's a big movement within hip-hop, and a lot of it's about drugs.
Right.
mental health and drugs, drug use, drug abuse, and not in a good way. And once you said that, it kind of started to click, and I found that whole concept interesting and wonder if it's still in play now. If these, I say to say it, talentless people are kind of being guided and flooded into the market to lead people in a certain direction. You know what I mean?
Well, absolutely. Your entire music industry, and I talk about the music industry as by record labels, right? When we talk as mainstream, making it, where today's medium is now doing it digitally and getting your cue out through social media and kind of taken out the powers that control the narrative. But you watch it all the time on American Idol, and they're not really looking for they're not looking for like a diamond in the rough. What they're looking for is they've got an idea of what they're trying to sell, and they're having auditions on who's going to sell it. So it's once this particular they know what the background of this person is. They can, or maybe they'll even make up the background, like the Rick Ross, the rapper, right? He's not what he says he is. Or when we had Vanilla Ice and how he was made out to be this thing that he was just a kid off of the streets in Dallas, right? You look for a story, you make it up, and then you find a half talented person to put something together. You put a good beat on it, and then you sell out a couple of records. Now, if it really hits and it gets a big showing, right? You get caught up in the system, which we're going to start talking about as the Illuminati, the controlling factor. And what you'll find out when you watch a lot of this music, what we're going to call maybe hip hop, or you feel free to tell me what we're talking about when we're talking about music, but the bling, the flash, the me, the very those inspire emotions of desire and lust and pride and envy, right? And the problem is all of those emotions drive a reaction, which is the opposite, right? When you have great desire and you fail to meet your desire, then you've become sad, you've become depressed, right? So these very, what you want to call self-absorbed emotions of pride, of respect, blings, vanity, all of this thing, it gets really pushed. It gets pushed real hard. I want to be the top. I want to be the one that gets seen. I want to discourage. You'll talk bad about women. You'll talk bad about other black guys, or other white guys, or other, whatever is coming against you, right? And you've got to outshow it, and it breaks you down, where you're no longer unified, and you're chasing this self-glamorized perception that can never be filled. Once you start having a desire is a thing of always wanting more. You cannot achieve desire. You never fulfill desire. You never feel vanity. Those are things that are empty, bottomless emotions, okay? And that will lead to these negative emotions that cause you less likely to succeed in relationships, personal relationships, work relationships, life relationships. It will teach you to be very emotional and respond with emotion and not logic and not sitting back. And now you're in your reptilian brain, so to say, where you're just reacting to the environments around you and not really contemplating on your greater experience, so to say. Now, this is going to create, and now if you're already in hardships and you're going to be fighting these personal inner demons, you're much more likely to fall down these cracks in these roads that lead to filling up a prison or hospital or whatever it could be, right? And it feeds right into this system. Now we know that we've got an entity that sparks up rebellion and controls populations in other countries, and they've even done it in our country. What's to say that they're not doing the same thing to keep people, like we talked about in the last episode, divided, not united? Because what is it? People know that the CIA was involved in drugs. I mean, you walk down and you say it all the time. The CIA, were they involved in drug trading with the Contras? They'll say, yeah. And when we say, well, who put drugs in the black communities, people will say the government did it, and it is. Now the thing is what was the motivation by it? Was it really driven by this, or was it driven by this? And it's a lot of things all combined that made it what it is. But what we're doing is we're lying about it, and we're not coming clean about it, and we're not saying that this was done in the eyes of protecting the price of oil, fighting communism, or whatnot. And the CIA, I don't know if I said this earlier, the CIA says the best way to control a resistance is to lead it. The best way to guide the resistance is to lead it, infiltrate it, get into it, and then tell the people where to go. And they'll do that by bribing people, framing people. So if you get, this happens all the time in the music industry, you get caught doing something that will, oh, Dave Chappelle does drugs, he's crazy, he went out to Africa, right? And we're discrediting him, right? Mm-hmm. Worst thing you can do to a man is discredit him and get, try to break down his word through emotion, and people are quick to respond to emotion before logic. Emotion, just things come out, where logic actually sit down and say, okay, how does this work? How does this work? How does this work? Right? Mm-hmm. So when you're talking about trying to disrupt a community, and this is definitely what happened, and then take advantage of this event that happened and do your modern day slavery, and that's what you're doing through your prison system. It is a modern day slavery, and it is set up on a system of control. Okay, it's a system of control, saying that all of these things: music industry, broken down homes, drugs brought into your system, police not looking out for you, you're taught by the people around you, you get lost. Now this happens in all kinds of industries. This is not, cultures. White people get caught up in they get their money. I don't like to make it a white black kind of topic, but I think what I'm talking about is like a very modern kind of situation, home life, suburb life, where now you're starting to pay for a police system that is really kind of overstepping its bounds, or possibly it's pushing this need more arrest, need more arrest, need more arrest. We can't have a police officer going and getting a cat out of a tree now. He's got to be out there making arrests, or getting a speeding ticket, or catching the next big break, because that's how you get promoted.
Which is it's kind of a flawed system. I understand that you have to write tickets and you have to make arrests to be an officer. I get that. But if you happen to go through a month where only thing that happened was there were only cats in the trees that needed saving, instead of making up something to, write a ticket for, or, I just think that would absolutely make for a better, going forward, make for a better overall society. I mean, it would make people feel like the police officers are actually there for the best interest.
This is the problem that we have in general, is we always think that we're going to govern in the best interests of the citizens.
Right.
But if you're in a position of governing, right, and what's more important is your treaty with this ally more important than a certain segment of your population, right? Are you a globalist, looking out for the global interest of the world? Are you looking out for what is in my best interest financially? And it's that case, has our empire building of the world infiltrated our country, that it is more important for us to play a role in the world than it is as the citizens of the United States? And who's making that decision? Are we doing it through our votes, or is there a deep state different agenda, that we're not looking at politics as a Republican or Democrat, conservative, liberal, but we're really looking about it as a globalist, nationalist kind of perspective, and which one is right. I mean, if you want to get philosophical about this, who's right? Maybe there is something to the globalist. Maybe there is something to the nationalist. But our team is the United States, and we want our country to represent our morals. And our morals are based on just exactly what you talked about: loving one another, being united, knowing the truth of what our government's doing, and we have to expose and we have to look into things that require further investigation. And what we have is a system of government that knows. We have this system in the government that knows everything, the intelligence, and they know that they have the most intelligence and that they really affect our role in the world game of things. And they may or may not let the Congress know. They may or may not let the citizenry know, because they feel they know what's best. And these are the people that are paying for drugs to come into the country, that we're allowing these terrible cartels that are transporting to Mexico to do these terrible atrocities. They're doing just as terrible things in as the Middle East and as you do with ISIS. And then you have to start looking, does the CIA have involvement with ISIS? Because there's a lot to be gained in interfering with Middle Eastern affairs, keeping this system of money, trading of oil, and trading of weapons in the wild, crazy Middle East. It's always at war, so it's constantly feeding your war budget, right? And we don't think about it, but our war budget right now is astronomical, because we're blowing people up with munitions, with drones, with things all the time. And what we don't use for ordnance, we're selling openly in the international market to just about anybody that will buy it. We'll sell it to Israel, that will turn around and sell it to Iran, and those two are mortal enemies, and yet they're buying stuff. They're buying stuff, and here's the CIA funding the Iraq to fight and be a thorn in the side of Iran, and at the same time we're giving Iran, because we want the Hezbollah to release some of our terrorists that we said weren't going to negotiate with terrorists, but here we are. Covertly negotiating with terrorists, right? So, I mean, the whole thing is absolutely crazy. And if you start looking at what happened in Afghanistan, if you start looking at what happened in Vietnam, and this is just the CIA running the world, for the last, 50 years, and you look at the Bill and Hillary Clinton being the governors in Arkansas, where the cocaine was coming in. You look at George Bush, who basically was fully aware of the situation. Him and the Clintons are very, very long time close friends. And when you think of them as the Bushes, the Clintons, right? Those two don't like those. They are longtime friends. They're seen. They go to the Bohemian Grove together. If you don't know what the Bohemian Grove is, it's where they worship to the owl and fake sacrifice a baby to the owl. And again, that goes into a lot of spiritual, astrological stuff that they're doing there.
Now, are they getting paid to keep their mouth quiet, or are they getting paid to be a part of this?
Well, understand at some point this isn't about money, so to say. We're
or
thinking
maybe
about
powerful.
You're controlling the souls of the world. Okay.
Yeah.
You're controlling the souls of the world, and that's why you have a birth certificate and you have a death certificate, and you are a citizen of a country, and therefore you become an asset of the country, because they are authorized so much fiat currency, that's Federal Reserve currency, based on your citizenry. And there's a lot of crazy stuff when you get into that, but that's the banking system, that's the Federal Reserve, and they print money, and by printing money, your money is worth less. So even though you might have $100,000, it's only worth $50,000 from when you got it, right? If you don't get a 10% raise every year, your money's worth less than it was the year before that because prices go up, and that's how they do it. And when you default on this loan, right? They've taken meaningless number and now they say, now I own this property, right? This is mine, right? And that's the way they look at it.
Meaning
This
car, house.
whatever.
Right.
People are still traded on the open, in the world. There's sex trafficking. There's slave labor still throughout the world. The trade in drugs. Trade of drugs and weapons is a worldwide event that governments oversee because it's part of their natural resources. Whether you want to think of it that way or not, that's the way these governments do it. And if this asset is leaving its country, they're going to get a part of it. So I don't know. I'm getting kind of rambly. Terrence, you got anything to add to it?
You've said slave labor a few times. Isn't there some form of what you can consider slave labor now that's going on that kind of ties into the whole Rick Ross, South Central California area?
Well,
you see where I'm headed?
Absolutely. You have people that get kidnapped, right? Look, one of the worst things about illegal immigration is that you have coyotes that bring people over here, and it is a way of human trafficking, right? Now, those people might be put into onto a farm in West Texas, or they may be put into some kind of Backpage.com type of escort prostitution, right? And these people are taken, they're out, they have nothing, they're here illegally, they can't run off and go find, friends or family. Now they are literally held by some kind of pimp or something that sells them off, and they're making money, right? So there's definitely that.
I think you're going into, Cav, I think you're going into a more of a global thing than what I'm looking about. What about prison?
Well, the prison system, absolutely, but that's when I talk about global slave labor stuff, I'm talking about more like when they send a lot of servants to the Middle East, and they build a lot of these projects. They've got to do a lot of the work, and we had a lot of them in Algeria when I worked in Algeria. Dubai, they have a lot of their contract labor. They're really, they get paid, but they don't really have an option of what they're doing. Now, when you talk about slavery and the concept of prison, they've really kind of done away with a lot of the free work for industry. Like, you can make non-profit pens and stuff like that, and there's a lot of money to be made on that. But where the real money per life, per person is what that bed is cost and trades on the market. And whoever is in that bed is only as good as that bed is valuable to, they're filling it, right? And at that point, it doesn't really matter what you do as long as you're collecting that money for that bed with that head in the bed type of slavery. And that is a slavery because you're taking your rights away. You have taken your liberties away. You have stripped everything away from you, and you've caged this person up. And you gain something from it. And you gain something from it on in a traded market like the stock exchange, and anybody can own that bed. Now you were getting into semantics. Do you own that person? Are you paying for the bed? It's semantics. It really is. You're taking a person, you're taking them out of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and
Even
you're
though they
putting
did
them
something
into a
wrong.
bed. Well, and then we have to get into the whole morality
Right.
of what is good and bad, and who makes these rules in this society.
So it just goes deeper and deeper.
It is. It really is. But when you have set up a specific group of people to fall into these, you know this is going to happen. Is it going to happen to 100%? It's not going to happen to 100%. You don't need it to happen to 100%, but you need the 90% to hold that 10% from wandering off too far, you know. And you have created a system that you could have anticipated happening based on human studies. And these are studies that have been done, and they have hypothesized about it. They've let them happen, and then they've kind of confirmed their hypothesis. So absolutely, you have a slave market in the most literal of terms in the American prison system. It's not necessarily a American South slavery kind of concept, but it still is taking the liberties. It does affect a disproportion of minorities than it does white people, and that may not be specifically designed that way, but they have their own, you know, there is another controlled market in your biker gang of your biker drugs, and they're going to fill up, you know, they're going
Right.
to represent the white class of it. And a lot of the thing is since you have a government that is encouraging this sale because it allows them to do their activities throughout the world, they don't really care about whether or not you do it. They care about the fact that you fill a bed, you don't make trouble in the neighborhood, because when you start making trouble or you start getting out of your place, right, you're going to then go fill a bed, or you're going to go fill a hospital, or you're going to become a crime statistic that gets put into the newspaper so we can build more prisons, you know. You're going to fill a role one way or the other. So it's you can't look at just the Iran Contra affair and put it in its solo, you know, vacuum. It was in retaliation to events that led up from, and these are continuations. And we want to say one of the big things that happened in Afghanistan is when the Taliban really started taking a hold of Afghanistan and Russia kind of went out, they started suppressing the poppy fields. Poppy fields make your opiates, right?
Right.
Well, that disrupts your pharmaceutical industry. So what you need to do? You need to get over there and you need to push the Taliban out and let these farmers grow. Who's helping you to find the Taliban? It's the farmers that want to grow the opiates. So you want their support. So you let them grow and you help them move their opiates to this pharmaceutical industry. And it's a great big cycle. And some of that, since the CIA says it's justified because of global national interests, we'll go do this and we'll turn a blind eye to all this shipment that's going back to America. We know that it happens. And we've got people back there to collect our profits to allow us to do the next espionage. So it's all connected, and none of it's in a vacuum, and it keeps on going. And when we start talking about the music industry has been in it plays a role. It plays a role because it gets people riled up. It gets people, you know, a little feisty. Go out there.
Still does.
We're going to get a riot going on.
Yeah.
We've got a riot going on for whatever particular situation. It's civil disrest. It's civil disrest just like we do throughout the world. Everybody's got some kind of civil disrest, and you know what applies to a certain group by having informants in that group that kind of tell you this is the direction we're going. If we do this, we can get this kind of reaction, and it happens. And I want to, you know, at some point I want to talk about the medical industry and you know, pharmaceuticals and how the money's, you know, regulations are brought upon to artificially inflate these prices, right? So now that you've got it to, it's impossible for an individual to pay for their own medical.
I mean, it's insane. It's $480 outright for an inhaler.
Right.
you know, for some albuterol, but you get insurance, it goes down to $4.
Right, exactly. What is that? What sense does that make? And where does that money go?
Exactly.
And now it's just this big, and we can get all into that, but that ties into another thing. But it comes back to banking money. What is this money about? The money isn't really the big thing. It is the control and the power and the influence over what they would consider the sheep
Exactly.
of the world.
Yep.
And we're trying to wake up to that. And we're trying to say, hey, stop saying conspiracy theory like it's some kind of nut job who's
Off the rocker, just
Right.
making it up.
look at the information since it's not evidence and decide whether you think Gary Webb, he's the one that really tied this together. Gary Webb was the one who really put Freeway Rick Ross to the Nicaraguans, right?
Okay.
He tied it all up, put the Clintons into it, the Arkansas things, how it happened, put these serious things. He ended up committing suicide by shooting himself twice in the head.
And how?
Okay, now you give me a crazy look. Like, what do you mean he shot himself twice in the head? Well, he committed suicide by shooting himself twice in the back of the head. And you say, well, I don't know, that seems strange. I said, well, there was no autopsy because it was a suicide. You say, what do you mean there was no autopsy? Well, they determined it as suicide, no need for an investigation, no need for an autopsy, close it, process his body. The official ruling is suicide by 2 shots to the head. Now, does that say that he shot himself in the jaw and then he shot himself? Well, you would get that information in an autopsy report. Since there was no autopsy, it's invalid for you to ask that question. And I will sit here and call you a kook for looking at me crazy for saying that he committed suicide by shooting himself twice in the
I
head.
think it's invalid to accept that answer.
Well, absolutely.
Just outright, you know?
But if you're trying to hide the fact
Sure.
that maybe
Sure.
you're trying to silence somebody,
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to militarize the term to say something's wrong with you to not trust
Right.
your government, okay? Something is wrong with you to not trust your government. And that's what we're going to do. And we're going to get all these people all divided up, and we know how to rile this side up, and we know how to rile these people up. And we've got them so polarized that they are going to bump off each other with animosity towards one another. And that's the way we are. And what we're trying to do with our new medium, our new liberator of being able to speak to each other as citizens and say, hey, are we okay with this? Okay? Are we okay with this? Are we okay with the CIA having this control and doing these things? Okay? And if we're okay with it because it makes then we can make a public stance, right? And say, well, we're going to vote for it, and half of us think this way and half of us think that way. But we're not done like that. We're played with these particular situations and emotional politics and taking away logic and reason and investigation. And it's a very point distract, right? And this is since this is a conspiracy theory show, YouTube may choose to bring it down, right? And they've done that with a lot of people because it is considered the fake news.
Right.
That's what we're talking about right now is fake news because there is no evidence, as I explained. There's no evidence because it was not investigated.
Right.
So when you start finding all these same people, that's when you start to put this together that, hey, something's up. And we have to come together as researchers and point out to people when you want to say, hey, what's your opinion on something? This is the investigator that has done all this work. This is the whistleblower. This is where he pointed you down the rabbit hole and you did the investigation. And that's what I hope to do is bring these things to people's attention so they can say, hey, where do we go to do this research? And I say, here's the rabbit hole. Here's the breadcrumbs. So, we'll look to have another show. Terrence, I'm guessing you're having to get back to work, aren't you?
unfortunately.
Oh well, we had a good time. We'll have to get another show going on. As I saw, I've reached out to a man, Andy Thomas. I really recommend everybody kind of check him out. He's talking about the history of conspiracy theory and where investigative journalism and false flags and events of governing people kind of or a history of it, and how we're going to really do our own research to know when we're being lied to, and from there. So we'll plan that in the future, and we'll go on from there. Thomas, I appreciate you helping out tonight. You've done a great job, and really appreciate it.
Thank you very
Terrence, I love talking with you, brother. We'll have to stay in touch and get the next episode going out pretty quick.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and sign off, fellas. It was good talking with you. We'll be doing this again. Thomas, Cav. Sorry I was a little quiet, but I was just trying to take everything in. There's a lot to listen to, so.
Absolutely.
I'll talk with you guys soon.
All right,
All right.
Terrence, have a great one.
And everybody, that's a wrap.